It's this little flower blossom here. So it has it's called wild geranium, and also known as crane's bill. So there's the blossom. It's called crane's bill because the one that's going to seed, excuse me, looks like a crane's bill. It's like a sandhill crane. So it's also called stinky bob because if you smell it and pass it around and smell it, it smells like geranium. So it's wild geranium. It's good for canker sores. You can put it at a poultice on weeping wounds, and it'll help to dry them out. It also is good for like hepatitis B, sore throats, and it's called wild geranium. You can just you can eat the flowers, you can eat the leaves. It'd be kind of an addition to a salad, but it's a very pungent geranium like odor to it.
What's it called again?
It's called wild geranium. Wild geranium or cranesbill.
And it doesn't matter what part you eat.
Correct. Use the aerial parts, which are above ground. Yep. Okay.
Is the whole thing edible?
Let me look here quick.
Is that Carolina geranium? Or is that
Yes. So the roots are edible, and the root is the primary medicinal use. So the roots are very good too. That's where so there are some plants that have the potency in the roots, and this is one, but you can eat the leaves too. The other thing that's here, hiding in the midst here is cleaver. So this is also called goosefoot or sticky weed. Sometimes they would use the ends of the seeds for like pinheads. But cleaver is edible, but you would want to make sure that you cooked it because it has like Velcro, like the hook part of the Velcro that is pretty good at sticking in your throat. So you want to make sure you cook it, and that would soften that up and allow it to slide down better. This is one that has anti-cancer effects or properties.
That's the one that's in the pink.
Yeah. So it's actually good for breast and prostate and lymph cancer. It's excellent for tumor treatment. The cleaver. So skin disorders, kidney stones, UTIs, chicken pox, measles. So fevers, it's really good. It's a febrifuge, which means that it has a cooling effect. Making a tea out of it will help reduce fevers.
Do you use the whole thing?
All the aerial part. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And so it would dry. You would just dry it and use it. I should maybe try drying it in the dehydrator. I've tried it just drying in the sun. It kind of goes brown and almost black. So some things do that. It's nice to have something that looks a little more green when it's dry, but we'll see. So that's cleaver. Bracken fern. You can eat the fiddleheads. So the fiddleheads are the first ones that are emerging and look like a violin head. But all ferns that are edible, you should cook them first because they have an enzyme in them called thiaminase. Thiamine are the B vitamins. If you eat them in quantity, they'll destroy your B vitamins, and that doesn't bode well for the end. So you want to make sure you cook them before consuming them. You can use them for digestive issues, make a tea out of it, and also is good for various types of skin salves. One thing you can do too is cook them or soak them in salt water and change the water out a couple times before you cook them. It helps to neutralize that enzyme, the thiaminase enzyme. So this is the bracken fern. This is the western red cedar. Has scaled leaves on it. The bark is very vertical in nature. It's not patchy like a Doug fir. In fact, the Native Americans would strip it off in strips, just in a section of the tree, and then use it for making baskets. It was considered the tree of life by the Native Americans for everything except food. Baby diapers, shelters, hats, baskets, mats, boats, houses. I mean, they used it for everything. And even medicinally. So the fronds here are helpful for skin issues, for boils and ringworm. It has antifungal, antiviral, antibacterial properties. And you would put this into like boiling water, and you could make a tea out of it and use it as an external wash. It's not something you would drink, but you would you could also use it as an inhalation. So you could do for respiratory infections. So you do a steam inhalation of the fronds in a pot of water. It's good for warts, yeast infections, fungal infections, viral skin infections. A decoction is where you would take these and you would boil it for a little while, longer than a tea. So a tea is you would take the parts and then just pour boiling water over it, and then it would steep and cool down. A decoction is you're gonna boil those hard parts for 10 to 12 minutes, sometimes longer. But that decoction you would use as a hair wash for dandruff, and then other types of skin issues. It's also good as a heart tonic, a tea of the twigs. So you make a tea of these twigs, you can drink that tea. So a tonic is anything that tends towards health and tends towards strengthening a body system that it's a part of. Question?
So can you just go ahead and take it where it's at, or do you have to wait for new growth? Or?
No, you can just take it like this.
Okay.
Yeah, this would be fine. Something else I was going to mention about, so in Mrs. White's writings, it talks about the fact that we have the aromatic qualities of the fir, the cedar, and the pine. And we know today through research that is immune stimulant. And they call that, in Japan, they call it forest bathing, which is basically just a walk in the woods. And they've taken essential oil of fir and pine and cedar and those aromatic qualities and diffused them in the rooms of city-dwelling medical students on their rotation. So that's a very high-stress environment. And they found that those who had them diffused in their rooms had the same immune boosting qualities and didn't get sick as often as their counterparts who did not. So they were reaping the benefits of a walk in the woods, even though they were stuck in an apartment in the city doing their rounds. And those effects have been shown to be 30 days in duration. So one day walk in the woods. So every Sabbath, Saturday, go for a walk in the woods, and you'll have a week-long, if not a month-long, therapeutic benefit from the pine and cedar and fir aromatic qualities. On a hot day like today, you're going to get more of those aromatic qualities being liberated into the air. So the western red cedar.
Awesome.
So this is wild plum, and the plums are ripe. So if you'd like to try one, you can. They're
They're
edible.
blueberries.
They're a little bit like blueberries, except they have a seed. The seed is the largest part.
Can you eat the seed?
I don't think it'll hurt you. So many seeds have good qualities to them. You can spit it out and use it somewhere else or plant it somewhere else.
What is this?
It's Indian plum.
Indian
So you can make jam out of it. It'll take a lot to. I don't know that it has any medicinal qualities. Indian plum. Indian plum.
Oh, I thought it looks like a service berry at first.
We had this at our last house and we didn't know what it was.
So it's a native plum,
It's very good.
and they're pretty tasty.
Yeah, they are.
The seeds are big, but they're good. So this is self-heal. So it's this little flower here. All the aerial parts of self-heal are helpful. They're anti-inflammatory and antiviral. You can use the flower, you can use the leaves, you can eat the leaves and the stems, you can use it fresh or cooked, and you can dry and powder it for tea. The tea is actually best as a cold infusion. So basically you're putting cold water onto it, letting it steep for a couple days before you use it. So it's not like a hot tea that you would like after 15 minutes cool down and be able to use it. You need to let it steep for a while. So mixed in here are some other things, but this is the self-heal. It was said that a craftsman was not a woodworker, wasn't a very good woodworker if he was carrying self-heal in his box, in his toolbox, because that meant he was always slipping and cutting himself, right? but it is a good thing to carry because it does help wounds heal really well. It's good for cold sores, herpes. It's actually a good thing for diabetics to be aware of because it's helpful in reducing insulin sensitivity and helps normalize blood sugar. So if you are reliant upon those types of medications, this can be an alternative to that in a opportunity when you don't have that available. It helps fight cancer. It's immune stimulating. It's good for insect bites, rashes, poison ivy, and upper respiratory tract infections, URIs, and other allergies and chronic inflammation, kidney problems and hypertension. So high blood pressure is beneficial for as well. So this is self-heal. There's two different types of plantain. There's Plantigo major, which is the broadleaf plantain, and then there's Plantigo lanceolata, which is known as the buckhorn plantain, narrow leaf. And it's called buckhorn plantain because it has a long, tall stem that pops up with a little top on it that goes to seed. The broadleaf has a stalk as well that it'll put up when it's mature, and that's where they get psyllium husk from, is from the broadleaf plantain. So you can use the leaves and the seeds for soups and stews. You can grind it into a flour or use them whole. I like to just take it and just strip it off and pop them in my mouth, and you can just eat them that way.
This?
Not this, but the seeds on the stem. They're not showing right now, so there's none there at the moment. I can show you one later that has the stem on it. But this is the plant. So it's good for wound healing, sores, insect bites. When I am out. More than once I've gotten stung by my bees, and I'll just go and find this as quick as I can and pulverize it up and put it on the bee sting, and it helps take it away. It's good if someone gets stung or bitten by a snake. You can use this internally and externally. So this is the narrow leaf that's been mowed off. But this is making a poultice. Cystitis, diarrhea, again, respiratory tract infections, intestinal worms can be helpful in expelling intestinal worms, irritable bowel disease. And then it's also really good because it has some mucilaginous components. It's good for helping heal leaky gut.
What is that called?
It's plantain. Plantain. So this is the narrow leaf plantain and the broadleaf plantain. This is a fairly small example of it, but it'll get much larger. Toothache, sore throat, gingivitis is another helpful thing. So this is yarrow. So this is white yarrow. This is a pink yarrow. They both have the same medicinal qualities. It kind of has a fern-like looking frond here. You can eat the leaves raw or cooked, but it does you want to do that in moderation because it has clotting capacity. So it's very good as a styptic, which is a clotting agent. If you were to cut yourself, if you had powdered yarrow, just put it right onto it, crush up the leaves. You can use it fresh or powdered. It's good to put onto your, actually the tea is helpful for internal and external bleeding. So you can take the tea for an internal bleed. If you have an internal loss of blood somehow, it'll help it clot. Antibacterial and antifungal. So the tea is helpful in that regard too. You can use a poultice for sprains and bruises and swellings of the leaves. Good for dental pain, mastitis, anxiety. It's a non-sedative relaxant for the tea. Good for fevers and colds, menstrual pain, PMS, and measles. So measles would be like a breakout on the skin. But a very good plant. So this is salmonberry. So they come in the orange berries as well as a red berry. We'll see some red berries too. They're kind of a watery raspberry, but they're highly edible. You can actually eat the shoots in the spring. Oh, there's the red one. Yep, perfect. So here's the red variety. Oh, nice deep red. So know that salmon, it's called salmon because some salmon flesh is more orange, some is more red. And I think that's where it gets the name salmonberry. But it has the young shoots you can eat in the spring as they're just coming up and sprouting out of the ground. It's an astringent, so So you can use the leaves as an astringent, and it has some analgesic properties, which is pain killing. So astringent would be tissue drawing together. Like raspberry leaves are also astringent. So this is the leaf of the salmonberry right there. And you can use the chewed leaves as a poultice for burns. So if you burn yourself with the campfire, just chew up a poultice of the leaves and pop it on, or you could rub it and then put it on a burn. So this is salmonberry. So we just came upon stinging nettle here, and you can pick stinging nettle raw by taking the leaf at the top. There's no stingers on the top, just on the bottom and sides of the leaves. I'm going to clip that off, but you can, if you crush the stems or the not nematocysts, they're trichomes, glandular trichomes, it releases their toxins, which is basically formic acid based that causes irritation, which we just had someone walk into the mirror accidentally, sorry. The edges and the stems, but not the top. But my understanding is that the juice is an antidote to the toxin. So we're going to try it here and see how that works. So we're crushing this up and going to try and get some juice out of it so we can put it on as a poultice and stop the itching and irritation. Some other things, you can eat the leaves when they're young before they blossom. So these are the blossoms here on this one here. So those are the blossoms. You can use the tea from the leaves and the blossoms, but you don't want to eat the leaves because they can be irritating once the plant has blossomed. Yes?
It's also good for asthma.
Okay.
When you can't breathe, someone
Good.
told me
So this is juicy.
you can do it.
Just take that and see, put that on and just rub it around and let us know how it works.
Okay. How long should I leave this on here?
You know, as long as necessary.
Okay.
And Dawn's trying to get stung there pretty bad.
Yeah, it was pretty close.
So it's good for eczema and skin inflammation. The tea or the tincture. It's good for burns and insect bites and wounds. So that's using the tea as a wash for that, not using the plant itself. It's good for menstrual issues and other circulation. You can use the tea as a rinse for your hair. Helps to bring back color in the hair. Anemia, cardiac insufficiency, swelling. It's good for allergies and hay fever, like you mentioned. And in the old world, Europe, they would take nettles and flog themselves with nettles for gout pain, inflammation, sprains, and things like that. But here in the United States, our nettles are more potent, and they sting more so than the old world nettles seem to. So tendinitis, cramps, sprains, a poultice of that can be helpful. So we're looking at Oregon grape right here. It's a spiky leaf. It's opposite. So there's another spiky leaf plant that we have around here, holly. Holly is alternate, which means that the leaves are offset on the stem, and the spines are kind of three-dimensionally oriented in space, whereas the Oregon grape is in a single plane. It's not like warped. The leaf isn't warped. And holly is a dense deep green. And this, while it's dense deep green on a more mature, it's still opposite and in the same plane. The very young leaves of the Oregon grape that are young and pliable are edible.
That's right.
You can put them into salads.
Yeah.
So is it nice and pliable? That's a little too hard. Look for a lighter green one.
And it tastes like.
It has some oxalic acid in it, so it's going to have a bit of a bite to it, kind of sour. It does have berries. These are not fruiting at the moment, but berries where they get called Oregon grape. Kids call them nature's warheads because they're very tart. You get some caught in your gizzard. So very tart, the Oregon grape. And it makes great jelly because what do you add to jelly? Sugar, right? So you can eat the berries, the flowers, and the young first leaves. So it's actually, the roots are the very young, flexible ones, yes. The roots are the most medicinal part of the plant. Of Oregon grape. Girls, can you show her the Oregon grape? And it's actually an ACE inhibitor, angiotensin converting enzyme. So it's a part of the kidney, an ACE inhibitor. It helps to clean and stimulate the liver, helps with the gallbladder, the spleen, and helping to clear the blood. It's antibacterial, antiviral, helps with staph, strep, and MRSA. So MRSA is methyl-resistant Staphylococcus aureus. So it's the bad stuff that you find in hospitals. Helps with digestive orders. It's antifungal, so antifungal, viral, and bacterial. Helps to lower blood glucose. So this is another one that a diabetic would want to be aware of as far as the root. So it could help to lower blood glucose if you had a skyrocketing blood glucose. Cardiovascular disease helps to lower cardiovascular disease, and the compounds berberin is the main component that is helpful to fight cancer. So it's a cancer fighter. It's also anti-parasitic, which is beneficial against giardia, protozoans, and worms. So giardia is also known as beaver fever. It's what people will get that causes diarrhea in the field, not in the field, but just away from home. You catch it, and it's bad. It's a cyst. If you're going to be drinking water, you want to drink water that, like in lakes, you want to dip from the middle as opposed from the edge or out in the water, because the cysts fall down. A stream is tumbling, and so the cysts get stirred up, and it's just uniformly distributed through the water column. But in a lake, it would tend to filter down, or you could drink lake water more readily than stream water if it had giardia in it. So you'd be less likely to get it from dipping from the middle of a lake. So protozoans and worms. So a tea you make of the half ounce of the root that's dried and crushed in 1 liter of water and simmer it for 15 minutes. And that's the Oregon grape, Mahonia nervosa. Curly dock, Rumex crispus. The leaves are edible. The young ones you can eat raw. The older they get, the tougher they get. So you want to cook it like spinach. The seeds are coming up here. You can strip those once they mature, and you can pound them into a flour. The roots are the most powerful medicinal part of the plant. So constipation, diarrhea. You can use a tea as a salve or a poultice for skin issues. It's a good detox for the gallbladder and liver. And in the fall, you would harvest the roots.
So is that better for a poultice or like what's everybody doing in here? For a poultice? So
the poultice is good for the nettle, but as far as the roots being used, you can use it as a tea. So the skin problems, you'd use it as a tea, and then use it as a wash, or you could pound up the roots and use it as a poultice. Yep. So again, this is our curly dot. This is Dandelion, Taxicum officinale, and it comes with different edging tooth patterns on the leaves. This is a very sharp dentition, but the entire plant is edible. The greens, the roots, the flowers, the buds are all edible. It can be used as a hot drink substitute for the roots. But the medicinal value of the plant is very important to you. Digestive problems, gallbladder. It's a liver protectant, helps to heal the liver. It's a diuretic, helps in detoxification. And it's good for skin wounds, corns, and warts. And it's very high in calcium and potassium, so it's beneficial for bone health and osteoporosis, because it's a good source of calcium. Blood sugar control, it actually is an insulin stimulant, so it can help your body produce insulin appropriately. UTIs, or other urinary tract disorders. Anemia, so it must have some iron in it that allows anemic people to have better oxygen perfusion in their blood. Hypertension, so high blood pressure, and it's also immune boosting. It actually has a ACE inhibitor. I think it's an ACE inhibitor in it that's beneficial to. It was the ACE2 receptor, I think, is the one I'm thinking about. The ACE2 receptor was implicated in the last global health crisis as being the attachment point for the crown-shaped spiky thing that was attaching to cells, and the dandelion is one that prevents that adherence. So eating dandelion tea or dandelion root tree tea can be a beneficial antiviral in that regard. Yeah. The young shoots, the flowers, the roots are all edible on the daisy. Use it in salads, soups and stews. You use the root raw in the springtime. The leaves have a very kind of unique flavor to them. So you can just, it's in the aster family, so if you're allergic to anything in the aster family, you'd want to avoid it. But it has some good qualities to it. You can just eat the leaves off the sides. The flowers are the most potent part of the plant for medicinal purposes. So you can just pick those. It's good for chest congestion and coughing, asthma as a tonic. So tonic is general health tending. You can make a tea of the flower, the stalk, and the leaf. So you boil it together for 5 to 10 minutes, and then use that tea for these various purposes. Wounds and bruises. It's for fungal infections and skin and eye infections, conjunctivitis. If you're using it for the eye, you want to use a sterile water before you would use it. You can actually use it for flea control. So you take the dried flowers and pulverize them, and the powder you can use as a flea powder for your pets. Or, I mean, if you get bitten by fleas, you can use it on yourself too. And that's the oxeye daisy. So this is a very interesting tree. It's a birch tree. So we have birch here and we have birch there. This one's unique because it's actually growing on an old stump. It's called a nurse stump. And so the roots are going down. They're basically supporting it upright. They look barky, but they're the roots of the tree that have permeated down inside the stump. But this stump will just rot away and you'll end up with a tree on stilts. But the birch is really a beneficial plant to have around. You can eat the birch syrup, so you can make a syrup out of it, like the sap from a maple tree. So you would just tap it and use it like that. So the sap is edible. The inner bark is edible. So xylitol, anything with an OL at the end, is an alcohol, but it's an alcohol sugar that is actually toxic to the bacteria in your teeth. So it's a natural sweetener that doesn't have the glycemic index of other types of sugars, and it also is antibacterial. The leaves, twigs, the catkins. So the catkins are the male portion of the plant that hang down in the spring. This is a female cone right here. That is a catkin right there. So this is an old catkin. So this is a monoecious tree, meaning it has both the male and female parts on the same tree. A dioecious tree would mean that there's a male tree and a female tree.
Just like papaya.
So papaya is an example. Ginkgo biloba is another example of a male tree and a female tree, but they have separate structures on the tree. And the catkins in the spring, you can eat the buds. There's a compound called salicin in it, which is one of the main components that's in willow as well. It's a natural source of aspirin, essentially. So it has pain relief and anticoagulant qualities. There is another compound called betulin that's in it, that's antiviral, anti-cancer, antibacterial. And there's a mushroom or a fungus that grows on birch trees, not here that I've seen, but in other places, called the chaga mushroom, C-H-A-G-A. And the chaga mushroom actually concentrates the betulin. And people who eat the chaga mushroom, they use it as an anti-malignancy treatment. It's good for urinary tract and kidney infections. It's antibacterial, so cystitis responds well to it. It's a diuretic, good for people with edema. So edema is you have swelling because you have fluid that's building up in the tissues. Your lymphatic system isn't handling the interstitial fluid rapidly enough, so it accumulates in the lower extremities particularly, but it can help to flush that out. Helps to lower blood pressure by helping as a diuretic, and blood pressure stones, and helping to lower cholesterol. Also, it's a digestive stimulant and is helpful making a birch leaf vinegar and an inhalation from the twigs. So taking the twigs and putting them into water and then inhaling the steam can be helpful for congestion. And then for burns and frostbite, so two different types of burns. Frostbite is a type of burn, but it's from the cold as opposed to heat. The leaves, leaf buds, and the inner bark as a poultice can help accelerate the healing process. And then the leaf tea you can use as an immune stimulant. So just pick the leaves and use them. So it's indicated to be safe for internal and external use unless you're nursing or pregnant. So if you're not nursing or pregnant, it's free to use. So this is the red huckleberry, and there is a couple berries on this particular plant. There's one right here, and one down lower. The red huckleberries are edible. It has green stems. So there's blue huckleberry and red huckleberry. Blue huckleberry tends to be higher elevation. It grows in the same kind of areas that blueberries do. And the red huckleberry grows lower elevation. We have a big bush by the house that the kids saw. And there's lots of berries there, but it's antiseptic and astringent. So astringent draws tissue together. Antiseptic would like kill bacteria and things like that. So you can make a tea and make a wash out of the leaves and stems. But this is the red huckleberry.
To be aware of new videos like this one, be sure to subscribe to the Preparing for the Time of Trouble channel. For more free videos and downloadable audio podcasts, as well as handouts, go to www.preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com. Topic categories include recordings of live seminar presentations, country living, sustainable gardening, homestead remedies, how to be self-sufficient when the grid goes down, wild edible and medicinal plants, hydrotherapy, and end-time Bible prophecies. To take advantage of these free resources, go to preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com.